Imagine paying the price of a house for a single tulip bulb. It actually happened, and it shook the very idea of value. Since then, every bubble has followed the same pattern: hype, speculation, and crash. In this video, we will travel back 400 years to see how it all began with a flower, and by the end, you'll know the red flags to watch for when the next bubble comes knocking. Picture this. It's the 1630s in the Netherlands, the height of the Dutch Golden Age. Amsterdam's canals bustle with merchant ships returning from distant seas, their cargoes overflowing with spices, silks, and treasures from across the world. This was no ordinary nation. The Dutch Republic had become Europe's rising powerhouse, with the highest income per person anywhere on the globe. Wealth flowed in, and with it came a confidence that seemed unstoppable. At the center of it all stood the urban merchant class, traders, financiers, and shopkeepers, who suddenly found themselves with both money and influence. They didn't just run the economy, they were the economy. And in this world of prosperity, curiosity, and ambition, people were ready to chase the next great thing. Tulips weren't just flowers anymore, they were symbols of power and taste. In the chill of the Little Ice Age, when most plants struggled, tulips thrived. Bright, bold, and different. Imagine walking into a merchant's home and seeing a tulip displayed proudly like a priceless trophy. Owning one wasn't about gardening, it was about prestige. The 17th century equivalent of flashing the latest iPhone at a party. But these weren't ordinary blooms. Some tulips had streaks of scarlet, gold, and ivory twisting across their petals like flames. At the time, no one knew it was a virus that caused the effect. To them, it was nature's rarest masterpiece. At dinner tables and taverns, people would whisper about the admiral or the general tulip, names growers gave to their bulbs to make them sound like noblemen or conquerors, branding centuries before the word even existed. But here's the problem. Tulips only bloom for a short time, and for the rest of the year, the bulbs sit underground. So, the Dutch invented a workaround: contracts. You didn't need the flower in hand. You could trade a promise to buy or sell it later. A new kind of game had begun, and fortunes started shifting hands over slips of paper. By 1636, the craze had spread beyond the Netherlands. The French wanted in. Speculators crowded taverns, signing contracts, selling bulbs they'd never touched, laughing about the profits they'd make when prices climbed again. The Dutch had a name for this frenzy: windhandel, the wind trade, because nothing real was changing hands anymore. Just promises and hot air. By the winter of 1636, tulip contracts were changing hands so fast that no one even paused to ask, who's actually going to buy these in the end? A single bulb might be traded 5 times in a week. At one point, a viceroy tulip was worth more than 5 times the cost of a house. A flower bulb, more valuable than a home. And then, almost without warning, the music stopped. In February 1637, traders gathered in Haarlem for a routine tulip auction, but nobody raised their hand to bid. The silence spread like a chill. Suddenly, there were no new buyers. The confidence that had held the whole system together vanished overnight. Prices collapsed. Bulbs that had been worth a fortune days earlier could not find a buyer at a fraction of the cost. Imagine the panic. Some were holding contracts to buy tulips at prices 10 times higher than the market. Others clutched bulbs that nobody wanted. Tavern markets went quiet. Merchants who had once laughed over easy profits now stared at worthless slips of paper. Bros scrambled to salvage what they could, electing representatives for a national assembly in Amsterdam. The Court of Holland was even drawn in, but there was no real legal basis for enforcing these contracts. Most were simply torn up and forgotten. Modern historians like Anne Goldgar point out that the actual financial fallout was limited. Most of the trading had been among wealthy merchants and skilled craftsmen, and money often never truly changed hands. But the psychological shock was immense. Tulip Mania didn't just pop a bubble, it shattered people's sense of what value even meant. How could a flower be worth more than a year's wages? How could it suddenly be worth nothing at all? To some, this wasn't just economic foolishness, it was moral corruption. Religious pamphlets circulated, warning that obsession with earthly flowers led to divine punishment. Tulips had gone from symbols of status to symbols of greed, and their collapse left a cultural scar far deeper than a financial one. The tulip craze may seem absurd in hindsight, spending a fortune on flowers that wilt after a season, but that's what makes it such a powerful story. It reminds us that bubbles aren't really about the object being traded. They are about us, our hopes, our fears, and our tendency to move together like a herd. The cycle is always the same. First, something new and exciting captures people's imagination. Then comes speculation as prices begin to climb. Soon, mania takes over. Everyone piles in, afraid to miss out. And finally, the crash arrives, as reality can no longer support the fantasy. Novelty, speculation, mania, crash. The blueprint repeats itself across centuries. In the 17th century, it was tulips. Centuries later, it was the dot-com stocks, housing, meme coins, and NFTs. The details change, but the psychology never does. Herd behavior, the detachment from intrinsic value, and the blind hope that someone else will pay more tomorrow. Markets will always have their irrational moments, but history leaves us clues. If we can recognize the pattern, we can avoid being swept up in the frenzy, and maybe step aside before the bubble bursts. Tulip Mania wasn't just a quirky episode in Dutch history, it was the prototype for every financial bubble since. And now you know the pattern. You'll see it everywhere. Next time you hear about skyrocketing prices, remember the tulip that sold for a house. If you enjoyed this, check out my other video on how the Dutch invented the stock market and caused the first bubble.